The wind carried the smell of burning metal and broken earth. Ships hung in the sky like dying stars, drifting and smoking, their broken hulls groaning in the silence after battle. Among the ruins of a once bustling alien farming village, a small figure moved slowly, her thin frame almost invisible against the scorched soil. She was no more than 10 by human years, her blue skin dulled by dust and hunger. Her white hair clung to her face in tangled strands. Every step she took was heavy, as if the ground itself resisted her. Her name was Lyra, though no one had called her that in weeks. Her family was gone. The war had taken them all in a single night, leaving her to wander between wreckage and ashes, searching for food among things too broken to fix. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she no longer had the energy to cry. The fields that once fed her people were now black scars, the crops destroyed by weapons she did not understand. A faint, mechanical hum reached her ears. She froze, crouching low, her large eyes darting to the sound. Shadows moved at the far end of the field, tall, armored shapes, humans. She had been told to fear them, that they were dangerous and cold, that they would take whatever they wanted. But the stories she had heard before the war felt far away. Now hunger was louder than fear. She stayed hidden, watching. One of the figures moved closer, his armor shining faintly under the weak sunlight. He was taller than the rest, broad-shouldered, his helmet tucked under one arm. His face was lined, the beard streaked with gray, his eyes scanning the ground as if searching for something important. When he spotted her, their eyes locked for a moment, and Lyra felt her chest tighten. She expected him to shout, to call the others to grab her. Instead, he knelt down slowly, setting his helmet aside, and held out a hand. "Come here," he said softly. His voice was deep, calm, and strangely warm. Lyra shook her head, stepping back. She had learned to run when approached. But he didn't move closer. Instead, he reached into a pouch on his armor and pulled out a small silver pack. With a careful motion, he tore it open, revealing something that smelled richer and sweeter than anything she had tasted in months. He placed it on the ground between them and leaned back. Her stomach growled so loudly that she winced. She inched forward, eyes never leaving his face, and snatched the food. The first bite made her dizzy. She ate fast, as if the food might vanish. The man didn't stop her. He only watched, his expression unreadable, though there was something in his eyes, a mix of sadness and determination. When she was done, crumbs clinging to her fingers, she looked at him again. "Why?" she asked in her own language, unsure. "If you would understand." He tilted his head, then smiled faintly. "Because no one should be left alone out here." That was the first time Lyra felt something she had not felt since before the war. Safety. But safety was fragile. From behind them, shouts broke the stillness. More armored humans appeared, their weapons raised. Lyra tensed, ready to run, but the man stood and stepped in front of her, his voice sharp now. "Stand down." He barked at the others. His tone was so firm that the soldiers hesitated. One of them lowered his rifle slightly, glancing at Lyra. "She's just a child." The man continued, his voice quieter but still commanding. "You'll leave her to me." There was a pause before the others exchanged looks, muttered something, and turned away. Lyra didn't understand their words, but she understood his actions. He had chosen to stand between her and danger. He turned back to her and extended his hand again. "My name's Corinne," he said. "You're coming with me." For a moment, she hesitated. The ruins behind her were all she knew now, empty, silent, and cold. But when she looked at Corinne, she saw something that pulled her forward. Not fear, not hunger. Something else. She took his hand. The ground crunched under their feet as they walked away from the wreckage. Around them, the world was still broken. But each step felt like it might lead somewhere better. She didn't know where he was taking her or what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, she wanted to find out that far above them. The sky rumbled, the clouds split by the distant roar of engines. The war was not over. But for Lyra, something new had begun. Corin led Lyra through the broken outskirts of the village, keeping his steps slow so she could keep up. His grip was steady but gentle, his eyes always scanning the ruined path ahead. The ground was littered with twisted metal, shattered tools, and scraps of alien cloth fluttering in the wind. Lyra walked silently beside him, her mind racing with questions she was too afraid to ask. Every now and then, she glanced up at him. His face was calm, but there was a tension in the way his jaw clenched and his shoulders stayed tight. He moved like someone used to danger, someone who knew trouble could appear at any moment. Yet, every time he caught her looking, his expression softened just a little, as if he didn't want her to see the worry beneath. They reached a ridge overlooking a wide stretch of land scarred by battle. In the distance, strange towers of black smoke twisted into the air. Lyra could see broken human machines scattered across the fields, some smoking, some eerily still. But what caught her attention most was the massive ship resting on the horizon, its silver hull gleaming in the fading light. "That's where we're going," Corinne said, nodding toward it. Her stomach knotted. She had heard about human ships, giant floating cities filled with strange smells, loud noises, and people who didn't speak her language. But going there meant leaving everything she had ever known, even the ruins that still felt like hers. "Will they let me stay?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. Corin didn't answer right away. "No, listen to me," he finally said, though his tone carried a weight that made her wonder if he believed it himself. They descended the ridge, the air growing colder. The closer they got to the ship, the more humans they passed. Soldiers repairing equipment, medics tending to the injured, officers barking orders. Many of them stared at Lyra as she walked by, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. She lowered her head and stayed close to Corin's side. When they reached the ship's towering ramp, 2 armed guards stepped forward. "What's this?" one of them asked, his eyes narrowing at Lyra. "She's with me," Corin said firmly. "She's an alien civilian," the other guard said. "Orders are clear. No unregistered non-humans on board." Corin stepped closer, his voice low but dangerous. "She's an orphan. She won't survive out here another day. I'm taking responsibility for her." The guards exchanged uncertain looks. One of them opened his mouth to argue, but Corin's glare shut him up. Without another word, they stepped aside. Lyra followed Corin up the ramp, her heart pounding as the ship swallowed them in its metallic walls and echoing corridors. Inside, the air was different, cleaner, warmer, but heavy with the hum of machinery. Lights glowed from the ceiling, casting soft shadows on the smooth floors. People in uniforms moved quickly, some glancing at her, others ignoring her completely. She clung to Corin's hand, afraid that if she let go, the ship would swallow her whole. He led her into a small cabin with a narrow bed, a desk, and a window showing the endless stars. To her, it felt impossibly strange. No dirt underfoot, no wind on her skin, only the quiet hum of the walls around her. "This is yours now," Corin said. She blinked at him, not sure she had heard correctly. "Mine?" he nodded. "You'll be safe here. No one will touch you without my say." Her throat tightened. She had never had anything that was truly hers, not since the war began. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers pressing into the blanket, as if to make sure it was real. Corin stood by the door, watching her. "You're going to need food, clothes, and someone to watch your back when I can't be here." He paused, his voice quieter now. "That someone will be me." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to survive alone anymore. But outside the cabin, the war was still raging. And the ship. She now called home was about to be drawn into something far more dangerous than she could imagine. The next morning, Lyra woke to a soft chime and the faint vibration of the ship's engines. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The smooth ceiling above her, the gentle glow of the lights, and the warmth of the blanket felt unreal. Then, the door slid open, and Corin stepped inside carrying a small tray of food. He set it on the desk. "Eat, you'll need your strength." She sat up quickly, her stomach already aching with hunger. The smell of warm bread and something sweet made her mouth water. She hesitated only long enough to glance at him, then began to eat. Corin didn't rush her. He just stood near the window, looking out at the streaks of light as the ship traveled. Through space. When she was done, she wiped her mouth and whispered, "Thank you." His eyes softened, but his reply was firm. "Stay in this room today. Don't wander. Not everyone on this ship will see you as a child worth protecting." The weight in his voice made her nod quickly, but when Corin left, the silence pressed in around her. She sat on the bed, staring at the door, her thoughts restless. She wanted to trust him, but she also wanted to know where she was. What kind of place could carry so many people across the stars? Curiosity pulled her to her feet. She slipped into the hallway, the soft hum of machinery guiding her steps. The walls were lined with glowing panels, and the air carried a faint metallic taste. She passed groups of humans talking quietly, their eyes following her with open suspicion. One muttered something she couldn't understand, and she quickened her pace. At the end of the corridor, she found a large viewing deck. The glass stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing a sea of stars. She pressed her hands to the cold surface, her breath fogging it. Out there, she could see broken ships drifting like ghosts, and flashes of light in the distance. The war still burning somewhere beyond. A voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here." She turned to see a tall human woman in dark blue armor standing near the entrance. Her eyes were sharp, her expression unreadable. "You're the alien Corin brought aboard," the woman said. "You've already made enemies." Lyra's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because this ship is at war," the woman said. "Resources are tight. People ask why a stranger gets food and shelter while their own go without." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Stay close to Corin. He has authority here, but not enough to protect you from everyone." Before Lyra could answer, an alarm blared through the corridors. Red lights flashed, and the calm hum of the ship became a roar of movement. Soldiers rushed past the viewing deck, their boots pounding the floor. The woman in armor swore under her breath and sprinted toward the noise. Lyra ran back to her cabin, her heart pounding. Moments later, Corin burst through the door, his helmet back on and his voice urgent. "Stay here. Lock the door. No matter what happens, do not open it for anyone but me." She wanted to ask what was happening, but his tone left no room for questions. He was gone before she could speak. The door slid shut, sealing her in. She pressed her ear to the metal wall, listening to the distant echo of footsteps and muffled voices. The floor trembled beneath her feet, and a faint vibration ran through the air. Somewhere deep inside the ship, something massive had just docked, or slammed into them. Outside her small window, shadows moved. Not human ships. Something darker, sharper, with strange glowing symbols along its hull. Lyra's blood ran cold. She had seen ships like that before. They were the ones that had destroyed her village, and now they were here. Asterisk. The sound of heavy impacts shook the cabin walls, each one sharper than the last. Lyra sat frozen on the bed, her fingers gripping the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Outside the small window, she could see the enemy ship locking into place against Corin's vessel, its jagged hull almost touching theirs. Then the lights flickered. For a brief moment, the room plunged into darkness. When they came back on, the hum of the ship's engines was different, lower, strained, as if the whole vessel was holding its breath. From somewhere down the corridor, the sharp rattle of gunfire erupted. She flinched, her heart racing. Voices shouted orders in a language she couldn't understand. Boots pounded the floor. The war she thought she'd escaped had just found her again. Her door panel flashed red. The lock was trying to override itself. Corin's warning echoed in her mind. No matter what happens, don't open the door. She jumped to her feet, searching the room for something, anything she could use to protect herself. Her eyes landed on the small metal tray from her breakfast. It wasn't much, but her hands gripped it tightly like a shield. The door hissed halfway open before a massive shadow filled the frame. The figure was not human. Its armor was dark and curved, its glowing eyes locking on her with a predator's. Focus. She stumbled backward until her back hit the wall. It stepped inside. Before it could move closer, a sharp hiss filled the air, and a blast of blue energy struck the intruder in the side. The creature fell, its armor smoking. Corin appeared in the doorway, weapon raised, his breathing hard inside his helmet. "I told you to stay put," he said, his voice steady but edged with urgency. She started, but the ship lurched violently, throwing them both off balance. Corin grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. "We're moving," he said. "Now." The corridor outside was chaos. Humans in combat armor fired down the hall at advancing enemy soldiers. Sparks rained from the ceiling where stray shots had struck. Corin kept Lyra close, shielding her as they moved through the smoke and noise. Every few steps, he turned to fire, dropping anything that tried to block their path. They reached a sealed bulkhead, guarded by 2 human soldiers. "Secure?" Corin asked. "Not for long," one soldier replied. "They're cutting through." Lyra's gaze darted to the far wall, where molten lines were already appearing in the metal. The enemy was burning its way in. Corin's jaw tightened. "We can't hold this section. A vac route?" The soldier pointed toward a service tunnel. "Leads to the lower hangar. From there, you can get to the inner decks." Corin nodded and pulled Lyra into the narrow tunnel. It was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of scorched metal. The sound of battle faded slightly, replaced by the hum of the ship's deeper systems. But Lyra's heartbeat stayed loud in her ears. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere they can't reach you," Corin said. "Not easily." She didn't miss the way he glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting the enemy to appear any second. When they finally emerged into a quieter part of the ship, Corin led her into a small reinforced room. There were storage crates stacked along the walls and a single console glowing faintly in the corner. He closed the door behind them and locked it. "This will hold for a while," he said. Lyra sank onto one of the crates, her legs trembling. "Why are they here?" she whispered. Corin removed his helmet, revealing a face streaked with sweat and ash. "Because they don't just want the ship," he said. "They want what's on it." His eyes met hers. "And that includes you." Lyra stared at Corin, trying to understand his words. "Me?" she whispered. "Why would they want me?" Corin set his helmet on the crate beside him. His eyes were steady, but there was a heaviness in them. "Your people. They weren't just farmers. They carried something the enemy values, something rare. And you're one of the last who has it." She shook her head. "I don't have anything." "You do," Corin said quietly. "It's not an object, it's in you. Your blood. Your mind, maybe both. I don't know the full truth, but they think you're important enough to hunt. And that means you're not safe anywhere they can find you." Her chest tightened. The war had already taken everything from her. Her home, her family, her friends. Now she learned it wasn't over, because she herself was the reason the danger kept following. Outside the door, the muffled sound of running footsteps echoed. Corin turned toward the console, checking the security feed. The cameras showed enemy forces pushing deeper into the ship. The crew was holding the main corridors, But the attackers were clever, splitting into smaller units, cutting through weaker sections. "We need to move again," Corin said, grabbing his weapon. Lyra stood, but her knees felt weak. "I'm slowing you down." He turned sharply, his voice firm. "You're the reason I'm still here, Lyra. I didn't pull you out of that village just to let them take you now." Before she could reply, a sudden blast shook the room. Dust rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered. Corin swore under his breath and pulled her toward the back wall, where a narrow maintenance shaft was hidden behind a sliding panel. "This isn't on the main maps," he said. "It'll take us to the engineering decks. Fewer soldiers there." The shaft was tight, forcing them to crouch as they moved through the dim, echoing tunnel. The hum of the ship's engines grew louder, mixing with the distant thud of explosions. Lyra's hands scraped against the metal walls, but she didn't complain. Every step away from the fighting felt like a step toward survival. They emerged into the engineering section, where the air smelled faintly of fuel and heat. Huge machines pulsed with energy, their surfaces glowing faintly. A few crew members in grease-stained uniforms glanced up in surprise at the sight of Corin leading an alien child through. "We need a secure room," Corin told one of them. Now, the engineer hesitated. "Sir, the captain's already calling for you. Says it's urgent." Corin's jaw tightened. "Tell him I'll respond when she's safe." That answer made the engineer's eyes widen, refusing a captain's order wasn't something done lightly, but no one argued. One of them unlocked a reinforced storage room and stepped aside. Inside, Corin knelt so he was eye level with Lyra. "Stay here. Don't open this door unless you hear my voice. No one else's, understand?" She nodded, her throat dry. "I'll be back," he promised, resting a hand lightly on her shoulder. Before stepping out and sealing the door, the room fell silent except for the distant thrum of the ship's systems. Lyra sat on the floor, hugging her knees. She wanted to believe Corin's promise, but the way he had looked at her before leaving, it was the same look her parents had given her the night they didn't come back. Minutes passed. Then she heard it, a faint hiss from the door's panel. Someone was trying to override the lock. The lock's faint hiss turned into a rapid series of beeps. Lyra's eyes widened. Corin had told her not to open the door for anyone but him, but the voice that came next was his. "Lyra, it's me. Open up." She froze. Something felt wrong. The tone was almost the same, but too flat, too quick. Her heart pounded. "I can't," she said, her voice shaking. Corin said, "Not unless." The voice cut her off. "We don't have time. They're coming for you." She took a step back from the door. Her instincts screamed at her to run, even though there was nowhere to go. The beeping grew faster. Then the door slid open. It wasn't Corin. A tall alien in black armor filled the doorway, its glowing eyes locking on her instantly. It stepped forward with a smooth, predatory grace. Before she could scream, a burst of blinding light struck the intruder square in the chest, throwing it backward into the corridor. Corin stood there, weapon raised, breathing hard. His armor was dented, his face streaked with dirt and blood, but his eyes were sharp and alive. "Thought I told you to trust your gut," he said, stepping into the room. "I knew it wasn't you," she whispered. "Good," he replied, pulling her toward the hallway. "Now we move. This ends today." The corridor shook as alarms blared. Corin led her through the engineering deck, taking turns she couldn't follow, until they reached an outer maintenance hatch. The air beyond shimmered with a thin energy shield, holding the vacuum of space at bay. Parked just beyond was a small, agile shuttle, barely big enough for two. "You're getting off this ship," Corin said. Her eyes widened. "What about you?" "I'm staying to finish what we started," he said. "The enemy's here for you, but if I draw them away, you'll have a chance." Her chest ached. "You'll die." He knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders. Maybe. But you can live. And that's worth it. She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. I don't want to go without you. Corin's voice softened. I didn't have a daughter, but if I did, I'd want her to survive, no matter what it cost me. The sound of boots and metal claws clanging against the deck grew louder. Time was gone. Corin opened the shuttle's hatch and guided her inside. Set the coordinates to this beacon, he said, pressing a small metal device into her hands. They're friends. They'll keep you safe. The door sealed. Through the small viewport, she saw him turn, weapon ready, facing the advancing enemy alone. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and with a lurch, it launched into the black sea of space. Lyra pressed her face to the glass, watching the human who had changed her fate grow smaller and smaller, until the enemy's ships and the great warship swallowed him from sight. Her hands tightened around the beacon. She didn't know what battles lay ahead, or if she would ever see Corin again. But she knew one thing: she was alive because of him. And that meant his kindness had not been wasted. Somewhere behind her, in the endless dark, the war raged on. But somewhere ahead there was a place where she could start over, and she would carry his name there.